Imagine being born as an Amugi, a creature that spends its entire life training for one single goal, evolving into a true dragon and ascending to the heavens. For hundreds of years, that dream becomes your entire existence. You train endlessly in the mountains with only one companion by your side, a beautiful nine-tailed fox, who is also working toward her own evolution into a legendary 10-tailed fox. The two of you practically grow up together. While you focus entirely on training, she is always the more playful one, constantly teasing you whenever you take things too seriously. One random day, while the two of you are resting after training, she suddenly asks if you are actually happy living like this. Our boy doesn't even understand the question at first. The fox girl tells him that he spends every waking moment obsessed with ascension, yet he has never experienced what it feels like to be adored or truly loved by someone. But our future dragon immediately brushes those words aside, insisting that if he wants to evolve into a true dragon, he has no time for such trivial distractions. Still, deep inside, he secretly hopes that she will always remain by his side, and that one day the two of them will ascend together. But that tiny dream immediately gets crushed. The fox girl suddenly reveals that she plans to become human instead. She explains that she met someone among humans, someone she truly loves, and that person accepted her even after learning she was a gumiho. She smiles while talking about him, and says that she hopes one day our boy will experience those same feelings too. Naturally, our MC feels betrayed. The one person who stayed with him for centuries is suddenly choosing someone else over their shared dream. But instead of exploding in anger, he quietly swallows those feelings. He doesn't want to ruin her happiness. So he simply tells her that if she goes through with this decision, she won't be allowed to return to the mountains anymore. Becoming human means giving up ascension entirely. But if this is truly the life she wants, then he wishes her happiness. Oddly enough, his calm response only makes her more emotional. Normally, he would have argued with her endlessly and tried stopping her no matter what. Feeling awkward from the strange atmosphere, she suddenly yells at him, playfully to stop acting weird before quickly running off, thanking him for everything. And just like that, she disappears from his life. Not thinking too deeply about it at the time, our boy returns to his usual training. Years pass, then centuries pass. Eventually, he spends a total of 999 years training as an Amugi, leaving him with only one final year before finally ascending into a true dragon. But then disaster suddenly strikes out of nowhere. One day, a crazed human appears and attacks him using weapons specifically designed to kill divine beasts. This is the situation our protagonist finds himself in. The battle between the two is absolutely brutal. Even after our boy cuts off one of the human's arms, the man continues fighting like an absolute lunatic. Despite losing his limbs, the human still manages to stab him with a divine spear and destroy his core. Naturally, our MC is completely confused. Why is this happening? Why would a human go this far just to kill him? And why now, when he only has 1 year left before finally ascending? After surviving for 999 years, dying like this makes absolutely no sense. The human is also armed with powerful talismans capable of killing divine beasts, making it obvious this attack was carefully planned from the very beginning. Frustrated and furious, our boy demands answers, asking why the human is willing to throw his own life away just to kill him. But the human is already at death's door, bleeding from internal injuries while coughing up blood non-stop. When our protagonist asks what he even gained from all this, the human calmly replies that he didn't do it for personal gain. He was only repaying a debt to his benefactor. The moment our MC hears that, alarm bells start ringing in his head. He immediately asks who this benefactor is, but before the human can answer, the divine spear lodged inside our boy suddenly explodes and kills him instantly. And honestly, I can't shake the feeling that the female fox might be behind this. Anyway, after dying, our protagonist suddenly finds himself trapped inside a strange dark space. At first he assumes this must be the afterlife, but something feels wrong. His heart is still beating. Even stranger, although all of his energy is gone, his vitality somehow remains intact. Confused, he reaches out into the darkness and suddenly feels some kind of wall surrounding him, almost like he is trapped inside a tiny prison. Thinking this might be another trick from that human, our boy immediately gets angry and starts attacking the barrier with all his remaining strength. But then something cracks, and suddenly he bursts out of the darkness. The next thing he knows, he finds himself lying inside an enormous treasure vault, overflowing with gold, magical artifacts, jewels, and treasures piled up like mountains. Our boy looks around in complete disbelief, wondering what kind of insane person managed to collect this much wealth. At this point, whoever owns this place has definitely been committing tax evasion for at least 1,000 years. While observing the treasure room, something suddenly catches his attention. a stone slab that looks almost like a tombstone. Curious, he walks closer and begins reading the words carved into it. The message is addressed to a child who never got the chance to see the light of day. It says that even if they meet again in a faraway place someday, the writer still prays that the child will one day find happiness. After reading the message, our MC immediately realizes these words were meant for an unborn child. Feeling strangely emotional, he reaches out toward the stone to offer a silent prayer. But the moment he sees his reflection in the surface, our boy freezes completely. Instead of his usual appearance, staring back at him is a tiny chubby creature with little paws, a squishy body, and an adorable baby dragon face. At that moment, realization hits him harder than the divine spear ever did. He has been reincarnated as a dragon hatchling. Naturally, our boy enters full denial mode for a while, but eventually he accepts reality. This is what humans call reincarnation, and somehow he has taken over the body of the child mentioned on the tombstone. Although he still doesn't fully understand the situation, he decides that the first thing he should do is investigate his surroundings. Looking around the room properly this time, he notices that the entire place is filled with treasures, legendary weapons, and magical artifacts. He even jokes that his parents must have incredible taste if this is what they prepared for their unborn child. Unfortunately, mixed in with the treasures are horrifying cursed objects. There is a petrification curse triggered through eye contact, a golden apple that condemns people to eternal hunger, and even a cursed potion that steals someone's voice in exchange for legs. At this point, the nursery looks less like a baby's room and more like a villain starter pack. While staring at the giant mountain of treasure, our boy suddenly notices something that immediately catches his attention: a gemstone. Not just any gemstone either, but one overflowing with dark elemental power, similar to the energy he possessed in his previous life. The moment he senses it, our MC instantly decides that he absolutely needs that gem no matter what. He immediately starts trying to remove the decorations holding the gemstone in place, complaining that they are getting in his way. But because he is currently trapped inside the body of an adorable baby dragon, the entire struggle ends up looking ridiculously cute instead of intimidating. Even when he starts using brute force and pulling with all his might, he somehow only becomes more adorable. Eventually, the gemstone finally comes loose. Unfortunately, the sudden force sends our tiny dragon tumbling down the mountain of treasure while desperately hugging the gemstone to protect it. After rolling all the way to the bottom, our boy slowly gets back up, while covered in bruises. At least the gemstone survived safely. But before he can relax, he suddenly senses something strange. A powerful magic distortion begins forming right in front of him, and moments later, a giant gate appears out of thin air. Our MC immediately recognizes it as spatial magic, and the overwhelming aura leaking from the other side instantly puts him on edge. Honestly, he isn't even sure his former self could defeat whoever is coming through that portal. Still, our boy refuses to back down. No matter how terrifying the opponent may be, he swears he won't show fear. Then the figure finally steps through the gate, a beautiful golden dragon. The moment she appears, our MC immediately assumes she is trying to intimidate him with her aura. Naturally, he decides to respond in kind by releasing his own aura and letting out what he believes is an absolutely terrifying dragon roar. In reality, it sounds hilariously adorable. The golden dragon is left completely stunned by the tiny squeaky roar. And just to make the scene even funnier, our boy suddenly sneezes right afterward, somehow becoming even cuter than before. Seeing this, the golden dragon gently pulls him closer, using her tail. But as her massive claw approaches him, our tiny dragon becomes completely terrified, genuinely believing he is about to die again. Instead, the golden dragon suddenly transforms into a human woman and carefully picks him up in her arms before telling him not to be afraid. The golden dragon gently introduces herself as Christina before carefully putting our little dragon down. The moment she does, she suddenly realizes something important. Our tiny hatchling hasn't eaten a single thing since being born. Immediately, Christina becomes worried and asks if he is feeling all right. Meanwhile, our protagonist inwardly thinks that back in his previous life as an imugi, going an entire month without food was completely normal for him. Compared to that, missing a single meal hardly seemed important. But while our boy is busy thinking about that, Christina suddenly notices the mysterious black gemstone he has been carrying around protectively. Curious, she reaches toward it, intending to pick it up for a closer look, and our little dragon instantly reacts. Without even thinking, he immediately leaps backward while clutching the gemstone protectively on his mouth. The sudden movement surprises even him. Our protagonist quickly realizes that he didn't consciously react at all. His body moved entirely on instinct. At that moment, our little dragon understands something important. The instincts of a baby dragon are starting to override his logic, and honestly, that realization is slightly terrifying. our boy immediately reminds himself that he needs to stay careful from now on. Meanwhile, Christina doesn't seem bothered by his reaction at all. Instead, she casually opens a dimensional gate beside her before pulling out a bottle filled with milk. And the moment the bottle opens, everything changes. The sweet scent alone instantly fills the room. It smells so unbelievably delicious that our little dragon reacts on pure instinct again, immediately dropping the gemstone without hesitation. This poor man never stood a chance. The moment he regains control of his thoughts, our MC quickly starts questioning himself. Should he really drink it, or should he try resisting temptation and maintain at least some dignity? Unfortunately, Christina notices his hesitation almost immediately. Smiling mischievously, she casually says that if he doesn't want the milk, then she supposes she has no choice but to put it away again. And the second our little dragon hears that, he panics. Without even a moment of hesitation, our tiny hatchling immediately rushes forward, grabs the bottle, and starts aggressively chugging the milk down, while Christina watches happily from the side. Honestly, the scene is so adorable it feels illegal. Within just a few minutes, our little dragon completely finishes the entire bottle, and according to our MC, there is definitely something strange about this milk. It tastes so unbelievably good that he genuinely feels like his soul is ascending into clouds made entirely of flavor. Meanwhile, Christina smiles warmly while watching him happily enjoy the milk. Seeing him eat properly clearly makes her genuinely relieved. After a moment, Christina tells him that if he is okay with it, she would like to take care of him from now on and bring him with her. She explains that the world outside is filled with countless delicacies, exciting experiences, and wonderful places waiting for him to discover. Hearing that, our little dragon quietly starts thinking things through. First of all, Christina genuinely doesn't seem like a dangerous person who intends to harm him. Second, there is literally nothing left for him inside the treasure vault, except mountains of gold and cursed artifacts. And more importantly, in his current state, where his baby dragon instincts can suddenly override his reasoning at any moment, surviving completely alone would honestly be dangerous. Having a guardian right now would be the smarter choice. But, let's be honest for a second, the real deciding factor here is absolutely the milk. Even while trying to convince himself otherwise, our little dragon fully knows the milk played a critical role in this decision. That drink basically conquered him spiritually. Anyway, after making up his mind, our little dragon picks up his precious gemstone before waddling toward Christina. Then, acting exactly like a toddler asking to be carried, he gently tugs on her dress while looking up at her. And honestly, this story is trying way too hard to assassinate us with cuteness. The moment Christina notices him pulling her clothes, she immediately gently picking him up into her arms. Holding him carefully, she quietly says that she was honestly afraid he might not survive after hatching. Then she thanks him for being born. And those words completely catch our protagonist off guard. Being thanked simply for existing is something he has never experienced before. For the first time in a very long time, our little dragon experiences a strange warm feeling growing inside his chest. And honestly, he realizes it isn't unpleasant at all. Still, deep down, our protagonist can't help but think about the truth. The child Christina is thanking probably isn't really him. Most likely, the original soul that was meant to be born inside this body disappeared before he reincarnated into it. And somehow, that thought feels strangely sad. Wanting to comfort Christina, our little dragon gently offers her the black gemstone he treasures so much. Christina tilts her head slightly, wondering whether he is gifting it to her or simply asking her to hold on to it for him. But before she can figure it out, our little dragon suddenly wraps his tiny arms around her in a hug. And honestly, this move is devastating. Inwardly, our protagonist admits that this is the only thing he can really do right now. In his own awkward way, he is trying to comfort Christina because he believes the original hatchling is gone forever. Of course, Christina knows absolutely nothing about any of that. To her, the little dragon is simply hugging her affectionately. So naturally, she hugs him back gently, creating yet another scene overflowing with enough wholesomeness to destroy my emotional stability completely. And just like that, the two finally leave the treasure vault together. As Christina carries him away, our little dragon quietly looks back one last time at the place where he was reborn. Deep down, he silently thanks the original soul for giving him a second chance at life. He even prays that wherever that soul may be now, it can finally find peace and happiness in its next life. But at the same time, our protagonist also makes a vow to himself. In this new life, he refuses to die helplessly ever again. This time, he will become strong enough that nobody will ever be able to hurt him the way they did before. And no matter what methods he has to use to survive and grow stronger, our little dragon fully intends to take advantage of all of them. Sometime later, we find our adorable little dragon sleeping peacefully in his new bed. The tiny guy is completely wrapped inside a blanket like a burrito, and honestly, at this point, he looks far more like a spoiled house cat than an ancient divine beast. After a while, our boy slowly wakes up and stretches his tiny body like a lazy kitten enjoying the morning sun. Watching this little dragon act cute, completely against his will, is honestly becoming one of the greatest parts of this story. Anyway, our MC explains that an entire month has already passed since Christina took him in. During that time, he has slowly gotten used to his new life and, more importantly, his new body. At first, he was extremely flustered having such a tiny adorable form, but after living like this for weeks, he has gradually adapted to it. Well, mostly adapted. Every morning, our little dragon begins his day with meditation. Gathering his mana carefully, he explains that a true dragon's body naturally absorbs mana directly into the heart even without actively circulating it. This was completely different from his previous life as an imugi. Back then, he had to manually gather and refine mana constantly, which made training unbelievably difficult and time-consuming. But after observing how Christina uses mana, he finally realizes that this is simply how dragons function naturally in this world. And honestly, our boy is a little jealous of how unfair it is. You see, in his previous life, he had to actively train both his middle core and lower core at the same time, a process so difficult it literally took him almost 1,000 years just to reach the verge of ascension. But now, thanks to his newborn dragon body being naturally pure and free from impurities, mana flows perfectly through him almost automatically. Because of that, he no longer has to waste effort training his middle core located in the heart. Instead, he can focus entirely on strengthening his lower core, which requires extremely pure mana. To our MC, this body is basically the ultimate cheat code. Well, almost perfect anyway, because there is still one thing making our little dragon absolutely miserable, and that problem comes in the form of one tiny adorable spirit that follows him around 24 hours a day. Our boy explains that the spirit was personally summoned by Christina to watch over him and make sure he doesn't get hurt. In other words, the tiny floating creature is basically his full-time babysitter, and unfortunately for him, the babysitter takes her job extremely seriously. The little spirit follows him literally everywhere. It doesn't sleep, it doesn't rest, and worst of all, it immediately reports everything to Christina. Whenever our boy tries sneaking away to train physically, or even attempts going outside by himself, the spirit instantly flies off to snitch on him. At this point, our MC is convinced the tiny thing was born specifically to ruin his plans. Still, despite all the suffering caused by his adorable prison guard, there is at least one bright side. His internal energy is steadily growing stronger every single day. As he examines the amount of mana gathered inside his body, our little dragon confidently concludes that he should already have enough mana to perform teleportation magic. Of course, actually trying it right now would be way too dangerous, especially with the tiny babysitter staring at him non-stop like a magical security camera with wings. Our boy even briefly considers taking the spirit out entirely just so he can train properly in peace. But after thinking about it for a moment, he quickly gives up on the idea. After all, attacking your caretaker's adorable spirit assistant probably isn't the smartest survival strategy. For now, his biggest problem is actually something much simpler: speaking. Apparently his mouth structure simply isn't developed enough yet, making pronunciation extremely difficult. Our little dragon admits that properly speaking will probably remain impossible until his body grows a little more. Still, he keeps trying anyway. And every single time he attempts speaking, the little spirit copies his expressions while cheering him on enthusiastically. The tiny creature becomes so adorable while praising him that even our usually composed MC starts blushing from embarrassment. Honestly, this proud ancient dragon is getting bullied by cuteness on a daily basis. While the two continue their strangely wholesome interaction, a familiar spatial gate suddenly opens nearby. Christina finally returns home, using her teleportation magic. The moment our little dragon sees her, he immediately rushes toward her at full speed, and to be completely honest, the way he runs toward Christina makes him look exactly like a tiny cat greeting its owner after work. Of course, our MC immediately denies this internally. According to him, he only rushed over because it was finally mealtime. Definitely not because he was happy to see Christina return safely. Absolutely not. Christina smiles warmly and asks if he came to greet her because he missed her. Naturally, our little dragon immediately rejects the accusation in his mind, insisting he only came for food. Priorities are priorities after all. Christina then gently picks him up before checking inside his mouth to see if his teeth have grown enough for him to start eating proper food like meat instead of drinking milk all day. Unfortunately for our hungry little dragon, she quickly concludes that his teeth still haven't fully developed yet. meaning our mighty former imugi who survived for nearly 1,000 years is still stuck on the baby menu. Hearing that his teeth still haven't fully grown yet, our little dragon immediately becomes embarrassed. Inwardly, our boy is practically screaming because he desperately wants to eat some proper meat already. Seeing his reaction, Christina suddenly pauses for a moment before smiling warmly. She realizes that our tiny dragon is actually understanding everything she says. She even comments that he might be the smartest hatchling she has ever seen. Of course, our protagonist immediately thinks that the reason for that is because he is literally a 999-year-old divine beast trapped inside a baby dragon's body. But at the same time, our boy also admits that his acting skills have been absolutely flawless so far. Christina hasn't suspected him even once, and honestly, this little guy is starting to abuse how cute he is. The moment Christina finishes talking, our MC immediately reaches both tiny paws toward her, pretending he wants to be carried. At this point, he genuinely acts more like a spoiled cat than a dragon. Even Christina notices it and laughs, asking if he wants her to pick him up because he is feeling affectionate today. Naturally, our little dragon immediately denies it internally. According to him, he only wants the milk, nothing more. But the moment Christina picks him up anyway, our boy quietly wraps his tiny arms around her in a warm hug. And honestly, my heart can't survive this much cuteness. Mini Madas. Our protagonist quickly tries justifying himself by claiming that staying on Christina's good side is simply necessary for survival. But let's be real here, after spending 999 years mostly alone, this is probably the first time someone has genuinely cared for him this warmly. Without even realizing it, our boy has slowly become attached to her kindness. But what do y'all think? Anyway, Christina hugs him back gently while smiling brightly, and says that he might genuinely be the cutest hatchling to ever exist. While the two share this wholesome moment, Christina suddenly realizes she almost forgot his mealtime. The second she pulls out the milk, our little dragon's eyes practically start glowing. The tiny guy immediately looks happier than someone finding free Wi-Fi in the middle of nowhere. As he happily starts chugging down the milk, our MC openly admits that this milk is absolutely worth acting adorable for. Apparently, over the past 3 months, Christina has developed a habit of sitting beside him while he drinks and casually talking about her day. Usually, she simply tells him stories about what happened while she was away. At first, our protagonist found this incredibly strange. Back in his previous life, he spent most of his existence isolated as an Amugi with almost no real companionship. Listening to someone casually share stories and feelings with him was something completely unfamiliar, but over time, he slowly started enjoying it, especially because Christina clearly talks to him with complete trust, fully aware that he understands her words. And honestly, our little dragon admits that hearing her speak so openly while smiling with a lighter heart feels nice. Thanks to all of Christina's endless talking, our MC has also managed to completely learn the language of this world. At this point, he practically understands everything perfectly, and judging from the suspicious little grin on his face, our boy has also secretly gathered a shocking amount of information about the world already. Anyway, while he continues drinking his milk happily, Christina suddenly calls out to him in a voice, referring to him as baby, which is honestly dangerous levels of adorable. The moment she calls him, our protagonist immediately freezes, because according to our boy, this milk never comes for free. Sure enough, Christina smiles mischievously before asking if, since he finished his milk, he could do something cute for her. Our little dragon immediately grumbles internally, complaining that he lived for 999 years and acting cute for milk is deeply insulting to his dignity as a divine beast. And then, he proceeds to strike the single most adorable pose imaginable, without even hesitating. Honestly, judging by that smile, I am fully convinced this little guy secretly enjoys the attention at this point. Seeing the pose, Christina instantly melts and starts gently squishing his cheeks while repeatedly calling him cute. The moment she does that, our tiny dragon immediately turns bright red from embarrassment, and somehow, he becomes even more adorable. While petting him softly, Christina suddenly tells him that because he is so smart and cute, she wants him to always be happy and live a wonderful life. Hearing those words said with complete sincerity leaves our little dragon speechless for a moment. Deep down, he quietly admits something to himself. Christina truly is a warm and gentle person. After Christina leaves the room for a while, our protagonist becomes lost in thought. He realizes that he has never experienced this kind of kindness before, so he honestly doesn't know how he is supposed to respond to it or repay it. As he thinks quietly to himself, memories from his previous life begin resurfacing, especially his memories of the nine-tailed fox. He remembers her asking if he was truly happy and telling him that he had never experienced what it felt like to be adored or genuinely loved. Back then, he completely failed to understand what she meant, but now, things are starting to make a little more sense. Our little dragon admits that while he still doesn't fully understand love itself, he has at least begun to understand what it means to want to repay someone's affection. A few hours pass while our boy quietly reflects on everything. Eventually, Christina finally returns through another spatial gate. The moment she walks back inside, our protagonist immediately decides that he has figured out the perfect way to repay her kindness. He will show her how much he has grown. And so, our tiny dragon slowly stands up on 2 legs before carefully taking his very first steps forward like a toddler learning how to walk. Honestly, this scene immediately reminded me of when my little sister learned how to walk for the first time. Tiny wobbly steps are undefeated in the cuteness department. Of course, our MC also has another hidden motive behind this little performance. He wants Christina to realize how capable he is, so she will finally get rid of the spirit babysitter and give him some freedom. Unfortunately for him, Christina's reaction completely catches him off guard. The moment she sees him walking, her eyes immediately fill with tears before she rushes forward, scoops him into her arms, and hugs him tightly while asking how she is supposed to survive having such an unbelievably cute hatchling around. Our little dragon is momentarily left stunned by the overwhelming emotional damage. After calming down slightly, Christina puts him back down and tells him she has something special for him. Naturally, our MC immediately assumes it must be food, and thankfully for him, he is absolutely correct. Christina explains that even though his teeth still haven't fully grown yet, this is something he can still eat safely. Curious, our little dragon watches closely as she reaches into her bag. Moments later, she pulls out several phoenix eggs, and not just ordinary phoenix eggs either. One of them is even glowing faintly, meaning it could potentially hatch someday. Our protagonist immediately explains that phoenixes are immortal birds that endlessly repeat the cycle of death and rebirth. He even compares them to the vermilion bird from his previous world, although he quickly points out that vermilion birds definitely do not hatch from eggs. But before anyone can continue the lore discussion, our little dragon suddenly performs another dangerously adorable move. Standing on 2 tiny legs, he grabs the bag full of giant eggs and starts dragging it across the floor with all his strength. I swear the artist behind this story knows exactly what they're doing at this point. After dragging the eggs over successfully, our boy plops himself onto the ground, grabs one egg carefully, pulls it closer, and immediately begins peeling the shell with intense concentration. And somehow, he peels it perfectly. The tiny guy then immediately digs in and freezes in complete shock from how delicious it tastes. At this point, our boy is basically ascending spiritually through food. While he stuffs his face happily, Christina explains that the eggs were specially roasted using a red dragon's fire. But honestly, our little dragon isn't even listening anymore. Within seconds, he completely devours the entire egg. And keep in mind, these things are almost the size of ostrich eggs. As he eats, our protagonist notices a faint trace of fire mana inside the phoenix egg, making the meal even more valuable than he initially thought. Seeing how fast he devoured the food, Christina quickly tells him to slow down before handing him more milk and reminding him that there are plenty of eggs left, so he doesn't need to rush. The moment she offers more milk, our little dragon immediately doubles down and starts aggressively participating in the meal once again. Milk and phoenix eggs together? Our boy is living his best life right now. After finishing another egg, he reaches for a third one but suddenly notices something unusual. One specific egg looks completely different from the others. It is darker red, much tougher, and strangely warm. Still feeling full, our little dragon decides to save the strange egg for later instead of eating it immediately. At this point, our already chubby hatchling somehow becomes even rounder and more adorable after eating so much. Seeing his huge appetite, Christina decides she should go get even more eggs for him later. While gently rubbing his soft, chubby stomach, she tells him to rest while she goes out briefly. As Christina leaves, our sleepy little dragon waves goodbye to her using his tiny paw before letting out a huge yawn that sounds suspiciously similar to a kitten. And almost immediately afterward, our overfed little dragon enters full food coma mode. Within moments, the tiny guy is fast asleep once again, looking absurdly adorable while curled up in bed like a spoiled magical cat. A few hours later, our little dragon finally wakes up from his food coma. And honestly, the way this tiny guy wakes up is practically identical to a lazy house cat. The moment he opens his eyes, he stretches his tiny body, spreads his little wings, and lets out the most adorable yawn imaginable. At this point, I refuse to believe this creature is supposed to become some terrifying divine dragon in the future. Anyway, after rubbing his sleepy eyes, our boy looks around the room and immediately notices something important. Another basket of phoenix eggs has appeared nearby. It seems Christina stopped by while he was asleep and quietly left more food for him without waking him up. Honestly, that is dangerously wholesome. Unfortunately, instead of appreciating the touching gesture properly, our greedy little dragon immediately starts drooling at the sight of the eggs. This man woke up and instantly chose breakfast violence. Being lazier than ever after his massive meal earlier, our tiny dragon doesn't even bother walking properly. Instead, he starts flapping his tiny wings and slowly floats toward the basket, while looking absurdly adorable the entire time. Of course, our MC immediately tries justifying his actions internally by claiming he is not being greedy. According to him, he is merely absorbing the fire mana contained within the phoenix eggs for training purposes. Sure, buddy, whatever helps you sleep at night. As he approaches the basket, our little dragon suddenly notices something strange. The unusual egg from earlier has changed. The shell has become even redder than before, almost glowing faintly with heat. It clearly feels different from the other eggs. Still, without thinking too deeply about it, our boy simply decides to crack it open by force. And this is where things become hilarious. Our little dragon immediately channels mana into his tiny paws before forming what he believes is an incredibly intimidating fist. Meanwhile, I am over here suffering emotional damage because his tiny mana fist looks way too cute. Anyway, our boy confidently punches the egg using his powered-up fist, and absolutely nothing happens. Not even a scratch appears on the shell. This completely catches our protagonist off guard. Naturally, instead of admitting defeat like a normal person, our little dragon immediately takes this personally. Our boy slowly steps backward like a martial arts protagonist preparing for the final battle. He even inwardly admits that he really didn't want to use this much power over a roasted egg. But apparently the situation has escalated beyond diplomacy. Channeling mana from both his heart core and lower core simultaneously, our tiny dragon leaps dramatically into the air before declaring that just this once, he will go all out. And then, this adorable little gremlin unleashes a miniature mana blast straight at the egg like a tiny dragon version of a Kamehameha. Honestly, seeing something this cute perform such a serious attack feels illegal. This time, the shell finally cracks open. Feeling unbelievably proud of himself, our boy immediately starts celebrating internally, convinced that his power is unmatched. He prepares himself to enjoy the delicious reward hidden inside the stubborn egg. But the moment the shell fully opens, our protagonist freezes. Because instead of food, a tiny white bird pops out of the egg. Our little dragon is completely stunned, and before he can even process what is happening, the tiny bird immediately flies upward and smashes directly into his face with a hug. And somehow, it's adorable. As our MC tries understanding the situation, he suddenly notices something strange about the little bird's mana. It contains two different mana signatures. One is the pure fire mana from the phoenix egg itself, while the other is his own mana. That's when realization finally hits him. The egg wasn't resisting his attacks earlier. It was absorbing his mana the entire time, which means our little dragon accidentally hatched the phoenix using his own mana. That is why the tiny bird immediately imprinted on him and now treats him like a parent. The moment our protagonist realizes how much mana he wasted hatching this tiny creature, he immediately collapses onto the floor in exhaustion. Looking completely drained, our boy starts complaining to the little bird, asking if it has any idea how hard he worked to gather all that mana. But the tiny phoenix simply chirps happily in response, while staring at him innocently, which somehow only makes everything worse. Seeing our dragon looking exhausted, the tiny bird immediately starts trying to comfort him affectionately. Watching this leaves our protagonist even more confused. He starts wondering if phoenixes are naturally this clingy, and then it finally clicks in his head. Phoenixes are still birds, which means imprinting instincts exist. To test his theory, our little dragon immediately begins experimenting. First, he casually walks away. Just as expected, the tiny bird follows him perfectly. Then he starts running, and immediately afterward, the tiny phoenix starts chasing after him in the cutest way possible. Our boy even begins running in circles at one point, and somehow the tiny bird continues following him faithfully without losing track once. At that moment, our protagonist fully confirms it. The phoenix has completely imprinted on him. Exhausted from both losing almost all his mana and running around non-stop, our little dragon finally decides to take a nap. He immediately flaps his tiny wings and floats toward his bed. Seeing this, the little phoenix excitedly tries copying him and begins flapping its own tiny wings. Unfortunately, the bird still can't fly properly yet, and our little dragon instantly takes advantage of this. Our MC quietly decides this is the perfect opportunity to rest peacefully without being bothered by the clingy bird and completely ignores it while climbing into bed. Unfortunately, this decision immediately backfires. The moment the tiny phoenix realizes it is being ignored, its little eyes begin watering before it starts crying sadly. And honestly, this scene is so adorable, it causes direct emotional damage. Hearing the crying, our little dragon becomes completely frustrated and starts internally venting about how this tiny bird already drained almost all his mana and is now emotionally attacking him too. A while later, Christina finally returns home. Looking slightly worried, she comments that she ended up taking much longer than expected and wonders if our little dragon has been hungry while waiting for her. She even brought more roasted phoenix eggs with her. But the moment Christina opens the door, she immediately freezes. Ink shells are scattered everywhere. Our little dragon is passed out sleeping peacefully, and curled up beside him is a tiny white phoenix. Christina stares at the small bird in complete disbelief before quietly wondering if it is actually a phoenix. At that exact moment, the tiny bird suddenly wakes up, and the instant it sees Christina for the first time, the little phoenix immediately misunderstands the situation completely. The tiny bird assumes Christina is an intruder. Without hesitation, it instantly positions itself protectively in front of our sleeping dragon and releases its mana fearlessly to defend him. This completely catches Christina off guard. She immediately notices that the phoenix's mana consists of pure fire mana mixed together with traces of darkness mana belonging to our protagonist. But what shocks her even more is the bird's behavior itself. There is absolutely no way the phoenix failed to recognize Christina as a dragon. Yet, despite standing before one of the most powerful dragon races, the tiny phoenix still chooses to protect the black dragon hatchling without showing even the slightest fear. And this is where things become important. Phoenixes are sacred firebirds said to dwell within the garden of the gods themselves. For such a creature to instinctively choose to protect the last black dragon in existence feels far too meaningful to be dismissed as coincidence. Yep, Christina just confirmed it. Our protagonist really is the last black dragon alive. Honestly, I originally thought Christina might secretly be his mother or something, but considering she is a golden dragon, that theory immediately explodes into dust. Looking at the tiny duo in front of her, Christina quietly mutters that this feels like watching the ripples of a predestined fate unfold. Crouching down slowly, she realizes the situation has become incredibly troublesome. The little phoenix clearly refuses to let her approach our dragon hatchling peacefully, and since it is still a newborn sacred beast, she obviously cannot use force against it either. Thankfully, before things escalate further, our protagonist finally wakes up. Still half asleep, our little dragon immediately grabs the tiny phoenix gently before telling it not to be rude, because Christina is their savior. And surprisingly enough, the tiny bird immediately calms down as though it fully understands his words, before happily rubbing against him affectionately. Watching this interaction leaves Christina even more confused. She explains that normally only one phoenix exists during each generation. Once the current phoenix dies, another one is supposed to be reborn roughly 100 years later. But according to her knowledge, the current generation's phoenix should still be alive right now, which means this situation should be impossible. Christina immediately starts wondering if some kind of anomaly is occurring in the world, or perhaps this is an omen of something much larger. A phoenix aligned with darkness mana protecting the last black dragon alive feels far too symbolic to ignore. Realizing this situation may be dangerous, Christina immediately summons the spirit babysitter, and finally we get the tiny spirit's name, Rai. Christina tells Rai that she needs to visit Pashas, the elder of the Red Dragons, since he governs fire-related matters and also happens to be raising another dragon hatchling himself. She believes he may know something about what is happening. She instructs Rai to carefully watch over our little dragon while she is away. She even asks our protagonist if he will behave himself until she returns. In response, our tiny dragon confidently gives her a tiny thumbs up. Or technically, a paw up. And honestly, it is ridiculously cute. Meanwhile, our MC is internally celebrating because Christina leaving means one very important thing: freedom. On the other hand, Christina still looks slightly worried while staring at the adorable pair of hatchlings curled up together. But despite her concerns, she admits that for some reason she feels like the little black dragon will be perfectly fine on his own. Not only is he incredibly intelligent, but he also feels strangely mature for a hatchling, almost as if he already possesses his own values and understanding of the world. Christina also notes that his mana control is unbelievably precise. Most dragon hatchlings simply throw magic around wildly without control, but our protagonist manipulates mana with incredible accuracy and complexity. At this point, Christina concludes that this little guy is far beyond an ordinary genius. She even briefly remembers her former master, who was also the owner of the black dragon egg, wondering if perhaps she did something to the egg before disappearing. And finally, we get another huge reveal. Our protagonist's dragon mother entrusted the egg to Christina before mysteriously vanishing. Still, Christina quickly decides that none of that matters right now. Whatever secrets surround the little hatchling, She is currently his guardian and teacher. Smiling warmly, she tells our little dragon that she will return soon. As she prepares to leave, Christina also thinks about the hatchling Pasius is raising. Apparently, the fire dragon hatchling is considered a genius as well, and has already grown enough to take human form. Compared to that dragon, our protagonist was born surprisingly late, but honestly, something tells me these two future monsters are definitely going to meet sooner rather than later. Before leaving, Christina gives Rai one final instruction. She says that she doubts anything dangerous will happen, but if something does go wrong, Rai must immediately contact her. Then she turns toward our little dragon and gently tells him to stay close to Rai while she is away. And okay, I need everyone to understand something here. In this particular scene, the artist straight up gives our little dragon cat ears. At this point, the dragon allegations are collapsing completely. This tiny guy is 90% cat and 10% ancient divine beast. Anyway, our protagonist immediately wonders why Christina keeps treating him like a small child. Sure, technically he is a hatchling right now, but mentally he is still a 999-year-old former imugi. Unfortunately for him, Christina completely ignores his internal complaints. Before leaving, she suddenly grabs his tiny cheeks and kisses him goodbye, and our poor little dragon immediately short-circuits. Keep in mind, this man spent nearly 1,000 years in his previous life as a lonely cultivation addict with absolutely zero romantic experience. The sudden affection hits him like a critical attack. Our little guy instantly turns bright red from embarrassment. But somehow the scene gets even cuter. The moment Birdie sees Christina kissing our protagonist, the tiny phoenix immediately starts chirping loudly while demanding a kiss too. I swear this story is weaponizing cuteness at this point. Anyway, after Christina finally leaves, our little dragon immediately starts celebrating internally. He practically shouts with joy that sweet freedom has finally arrived. According to our MC, things would be different if he were an actual helpless baby. But since he still possesses the mind and experience of a 999-year-old divine beast, being left alone simply means one thing: exploration time. As he starts walking around the mansion, our boy notices something strange. Rai is not acting nearly as strict as before. As our little dragon walks through the hallway, Birdie struggles desperately to keep up using its tiny legs. The little phoenix keeps chirping loudly as though begging our protagonist to carry him. And the moment our MC notices this, he casually grabs Birdie using his mouth before tossing the tiny bird onto his back. Yep, this little dragon just gave the phoenix a piggyback ride. Even our protagonist realizes how ridiculously adorable this looks, but instead of admitting it honestly, he quickly tries justifying himself by saying it would simply be annoying to let Birdie keep waddling behind him slowly. Sure, buddy. Totally practical reasons. Anyway, after securing Birdie onto his back, our little dragon confidently heads toward the mansion's exit. Unfortunately, a new problem immediately appears. The door handle is way too high for him to reach, so naturally, our tiny dragon decides there is only one logical solution. He crouches down like an actual cat, preparing to pounce before launching himself dramatically toward the handle. Honestly, watching an ancient divine beast bounce around trying to open doors is peak entertainment. But sadly, even after managing to reach the handle, our protagonist quickly realizes the door itself is locked. At that moment, our MC suddenly understands why Rai has been acting so relaxed this entire time. Rai never reported him to Christina because there was supposedly no possible way for a hatchling to leave the mansion anyway. Unfortunately for Rai, our little dragon refuses to accept defeat that easily. Without hesitation, he immediately begins gathering mana into his tiny paws and uses magic to unlock the door successfully. The second the door clicks open, our protagonist immediately turns toward Rai, fully expecting the spirit to panic and snitch to Christina instantly. But surprisingly, Rai does absolutely nothing. In fact, Rai's reaction completely catches our little dragon off guard. Instead of stopping him, Rai suddenly starts acting like an overly eager babysitter, desperately trying to convince the child she is fun and trustworthy. It's basically the magical equivalent of, "Look, I let you break the rules, so you like me now, right?" Honestly, Rai might be getting emotionally manipulated by a baby dragon. Not that our protagonist cares. Since Rai isn't stopping him, our little dragon happily continues forward. But after finally stepping outside, our MC immediately realizes another problem. The mansion is absolutely gigantic, and when I say gigantic, I mean absurdly gigantic. At this point, the place feels less like a house and more like an entire kingdom disguised as a mansion. Our protagonist finally understands why Rai never reacted earlier. Even if a normal hatchling escaped outside, it would probably get exhausted long before actually reaching anywhere important. As our little dragon keeps walking through the enormous estate, He admits that at this pace he probably wouldn't even manage to explore a fraction of the mansion properly. Now he finally understands why Christina constantly relies on teleportation magic to move around. But then, our boy suddenly smiles mischievously. And honestly, that expression alone should have been enough warning for disaster. Our little dragon confidently claims that it is a good thing he prepared for situations exactly like this. He immediately starts gathering mana while explaining that he has been secretly studying Christina's teleportation magic this entire time. More specifically, he carefully observed the flow and structure of mana every time she casts spatial magic, and somehow, this absolute menace actually manages to recreate it. A distortion suddenly forms in space itself. As the spell activates, our protagonist explains that the surrounding mana is responding to him naturally, almost like extensions of his own body. He can even sense mana flowing throughout the entire dragon lair. This leaves Rai completely stunned, because our little dragon has just casually activated teleportation magic as a hatchling, and not beginner-level teleportation either. Real spatial distortion magic. Even our protagonist pauses for a moment, wondering where exactly he should teleport first. Then suddenly, whoosh, the next thing he knows, our little dragon appears outside the dragon lair entirely, materializing high above a massive open grassland. For the first time since reincarnating, our MC finally gets a proper look at the outside world, and immediately he realizes something important. This world is completely different from the one he lived in during his previous life. But before our boy can admire the scenery properly, reality suddenly reminds him of one small detail. He teleported into the sky, and now he is falling, very fast. Our little dragon immediately starts tumbling downward helplessly while Birdie panics beside him. The tiny phoenix desperately flaps its wings, trying to pull him upward heroically. Unfortunately, our little dragon is way too heavy for the tiny bird, and so, boom, our MC crashes face first into the ground. Honestly, the impact alone probably shaved 10 years off Rai's lifespan. On the bright side, our little dragon quickly realizes that despite the disastrous landing, he successfully teleported both Rai and Birdie together with him. Meanwhile, Rai is having a complete existential crisis in the background. Seeing Rai panic so much confuses our protagonist at first. He genuinely wonders what the big deal is, but then, realization finally hits him. Think about it carefully for a second. If teleportation magic was something ordinary hatchlings could casually perform, Christina never would have left only one tiny spirit to watch over him, which means the moment Christina hears about this, she will immediately realize he is absolutely not a normal dragon hatchling. And honestly, our little dragon may have accidentally exposed himself way earlier than planned, but knowing there was nothing he could do about it now, our dumb yet adorable protagonist decided to stop stressing over it. He had already used the magic, so hiding it anymore was basically impossible, and overthinking his current situation wasn't going to magically fix anything. Meanwhile, seeing our little dragon completely lost in thought, Birdie tried getting his attention and asked if he was alright, which honestly, adorable. The guy basically has a tiny child worrying about him now. Our MC simply pats Birdie on the head, instantly making the little fluffball happy. Still no clue if Birdie is a he or a she yet, since the series refuses to reveal it, but either way the cuteness levels are reaching dangerous territory. Anyways, our boy decides to explore the area and figure out where exactly he ended up. Birdie happily follows behind him, practically vibrating with excitement while staring at everything like a curious toddler experiencing the world for the first time. They stop to look at ants crawling around, stare into the river where fish swim beneath the surface, and honestly the whole sequence just feels peaceful and magical. The artist absolutely cooked with these panels too, especially the scene with the water reflecting both our tiny dragon and Birdie together. That panel alone could have been the cover art. Soon, our little dragon climbs to the top of a massive tree alongside the whole gang. He explains that he wanted to scout the surrounding area, and just like he expected, he immediately spots a section of the forest covered by a magical barrier, which can only mean one thing: that has to be Christina's lair. Looking at it from the outside completely shocks him because from within, the place felt like an endless mansion, yet from out here it blends perfectly into the surrounding forest. Not only that, but the amount of mana surrounding the lair is absolutely insane. It's almost like the mansion itself became one with nature. After confirming the location of Christina's lair, our little dragon decides he's explored enough and should probably head back before something goes wrong. He assumes he accidentally teleported outside, but at least Rai is still here to guide him home. As he climbs down the tree, he starts imagining how impressed Christina will be once she learns he used teleportation magic all by himself. In his mind, if he acts mature and wise enough, Christina will definitely praise him for his talent. The little guy even starts fantasizing about Christina personally training him and helping him regain his former strength. bro is already planning his anime training arc before even surviving the tutorial stage. But while he's lost in thought, Rai suddenly notices how dirty he's gotten from running around everywhere, and starts picturing him like a tiny puppy rolling around in mud. Honestly, that image fits way too perfectly. Still, our little dragon convinces himself that as long as his acting skills are good enough, Christina won't suspect anything. However, just as he starts making his way back, a strange sweet smell suddenly catches his attention. He immediately stops and begins looking around, trying to figure out where such an amazing scent is coming from. And then he spots it, a cluster of mysterious wild berries growing nearby. Naturally, our greedy little dragon instantly hops toward them without a second thought. But according to him, these weren't ordinary berries at all. They were supposedly wild ginseng, a heavenly treasure capable of tripling someone's mana capacity. The moment he sees them, our little guy genuinely believes he just hit the jackpot. In his mind, this could be the key to restoring the power he once possessed in his previous life. Without hesitation, he reaches toward the plant, but suddenly Rai blocks his path. Being a spirit that can't speak, Rai desperately tries warning him that the plant is dangerous, but our idiot protagonist completely misunderstands the message. Instead of listening, he starts trying to push Rai aside, and the two end up getting into an adorable little struggle while Rai desperately fights for his life trying to stop this dragon-shaped disaster from poisoning himself. But then Birdie sees Rai attacking their parent and immediately jumps into action. Despite being around the same size, Birdie actually manages to knock Rai away for a brief moment, and our little dragon instantly takes advantage of the opening. He grabs the so-called ginseng and shoves it straight into his mouth. The only problem? The root is massive, so instead of swallowing it properly, he awkwardly chomps down half of it while the other half falls onto the ground. At first he thinks everything is fine since the root is already in his mouth anyway, but then the plant suddenly starts moving. And yeah, turns out it wasn't ginseng. The thing literally has a face, a horrifying one. It immediately starts making this creepy laughing crying noise that honestly sounds like it crawled straight out of a cursed horror manga. The moment our protagonist sees it, he instantly realizes he messed up, badly. Almost immediately, he begins feeling dizzy while Rai and Birdie freeze in absolute horror. Birdie quickly rushes over to check on him as our protagonist realizes the obvious truth. This world is completely different from his previous one, so there's no guarantee things that look familiar are actually safe. And now he just ate a nightmare vegetable with a face. As his consciousness starts fading, he begins worrying about Rai and Birdie, blaming himself since he was the one who brought them outside in the first place. But just before he completely blacks out, someone suddenly appears and begins healing him with magic. The mysterious figure uses their power to connect him with the plant itself, stabilizing his condition. And finally, we get to see the savior, a small green-haired child. Honestly, I still can't tell if it's a boy or a girl, but I'm leaning toward girl for now. Using magic, the mysterious child lifts our little dragon into the air before feeding him something that looks like an elixir. The moment it enters his body, he immediately starts feeling better and slowly opens his eyes. But before he can properly see his savior, the green-haired child quietly walks away. Exhausted, our little dragon focuses on recovering his strength, while both Rai and Birdie rush over to him. Birdie immediately hugs him tightly, and our little guy tells the tiny bird not to cry because he just needs a bit of rest. And just like that, the scene suddenly shifts over to Christina, who has finally arrived at the Red Dragon's lair. She greets the Red Dragon Pasias. And that's where today's episode ends. Anyway, this is where we stop our adorable dragon's journey for today. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give the video a thumbs up and help spread it around so more people can discover this insanely cute story. And I need y'all to leave a comment using either Birdie or Little Dragon so I know you made it all the way to the end. Also, thank you so much for watching. And if you can, please support the channel by subscribing. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Peace.